Welcome to the Growth Plus Exit Podcast, where owners of privately held middle market companies talk about founding, scaling, and exiting their businesses successfully. Learn how to maximize and monetize your business on your own terms. Let's get started.
Hello, I'm Heather Bennett, your host for the Growth Plus Exit Podcast, a podcast featuring middle market business owners and experts talking about founding, growing, scaling, and exiting their businesses on their own terms. Past guests include Whitney Opperman, General Manager of Opperman Sons, Matt Vukov, co-founder and CEO of TalentCraft, and Kelly Schrod, founder and chairman of Data Vision. This episode is brought to you by Newport LLC, a team of seasoned executives who help CEOs of privately held companies grow, de-risk, and exit their businesses successfully. Newport LLC is a winner of the prestigious Inc. magazine Power Partner Awards, a list of elite B2B companies from across the globe. To see the entire list, visit inc.com/Power Partner Awards. To learn more about Newport, visit us at newportllc.com or find us on LinkedIn. Before introducing today's guest, I would like to thank Preeti Suma Mahapatra for introducing me to my guest. Today's guest is Adam Spector. Adam is the co-founder of Chore, hirechore.com, the operations partner trusted by fast-growing startups to handle administrative and operational work. Chore manages essential but time-consuming tasks from HR administration and onboarding to so many other areas. And Adam and I will definitely be discussing, what Chore is trying to accomplish and how they're changing the industry. A seasoned entrepreneur with deep experience in product and operations, Adam has built his career across solving practical problems, designing systems at scale, and helping teams stay focused on what actually drives growth. And given that this is the Growth Plus Exit podcast, I'm very excited to talk to him about that. Adam, welcome to the show.
Hi there. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
So let's jump right in and tell me about how you got started building companies. So we could even go back before Chore. I'd love to hear about what was the impetus for you becoming an entrepreneur?
The impetus was probably my grandfather a long time ago. So he came over from Europe right before World War II, and he ended up, basically had like a few, dollars in his pocket at most, and ended up starting a paint company, which is a fairly successful paint company on the East Coast. He ended up selling it before it got massive, but still did well. And I remember him kind of keep building businesses. Then my uncle also started a business, a real estate business. And it just was sort of always in our blood, I think, a little bit to be an entrepreneur. And and then for me, I always wanted to be in technology just because it always seemed like that was where the most changes were happening and the most interesting places to be if you wanted to build at the cutting edge. And so after I finished grad school, I got my JD MBA. I then moved, essentially not straight away, but pretty much straight away, moved out to San Francisco from the East Coast. And within 18 months of making it here, the first company I worked for got acquired for $400 million. It was not my company, but got acquired for $400 million. I was like, oh my God, welcome to Silicon Valley. This is amazing. And I then started my first company. And now 4 companies later, or sort of 3 companies later, I'm on my 4th company now. Kind of being an entrepreneur is in my blood is what I've been doing. I've had the privilege of investing in over 200 startups as well. So really a sort of a relatively deep, I'm deep in the Silicon Valley tech world for better and worse.
That's awesome. And I think that's what I find really interesting about your story is the fact that you've been in this world of growing companies and really understanding when to invest, when not to invest. So we'll talk about that maybe a little bit later. So let's talk about Chore. Where did the idea come from?
It came from a really simple analysis of all these companies that I had invested in the ones that I had founded, and saying, what was the biggest waste of my time as a founder? And what was one of the biggest things holding me back from success? Now, certainly you need to have a great product. You need to have a great market to sell into, right? If you don't have those things, it's really hard to build a good business. But if you have those elements, And yet you're still distracted by all these sort of back office operations, which I would call human resources, finance work, compliance work, and even sort of equity work. If you're distracted by those things, and there's all the random things that come up every day, you won't have time to actually build a great product. You won't have time to really figure out the right market for you. And that's why most companies fail. Historically, not just tech startups, every single business out there, historically, the data shows pretty clearly the large majority of them fail because they work in the business. The founders work in the business and not on the business, right? It's a fairly famous saying. And that's why most businesses fail. And that is what Chore is meant to stop. I think the world is a better place when there are more successful founders and more new businesses. And therefore, we want to do everything we can to help make that a reality. And I think standardizing and removing the pain and anxiety of back office operations is a win for literally everyone out there, for society, for the companies, obviously for my company, Chore, as well. But everyone can win in this scenario. And that's drives me every day.
Excellent. And I would agree with that. I mean, the numbers, the data shows it, that the vast majority of people in this country are employed by a small to middle market company.
Right.
And if we can improve the success rate and the healthiness of those companies, that's where we're making an impact, to families, communities, everywhere. So I love your perspective on that. Excellent. So let's talk about the beginning of Chore, when you were growing it. Mm-hmm. Tell me about who was involved, how you made decisions about what to do next as you were growing it.
So Chore is a pretty unique founding history. So in 2020, right before the pandemic, I was doing some part-time work as essentially a fractional chief operating officer for an amazing nonprofit. And I was also doing my full-time job, was working at Twitter as a product manager, and started talking to people, said, hey, how can I standardize this? This is the problem that every company has, not just this nonprofit, but every company has this sort of back office issue where it's not, once again, all the stuff I just said, it's not in the best interest of the founder to spend their time on it, and yet they are. So I started talking to lots of different founders, investors, different people in the industry, just to say, hey, would this be something you would buy? If I could standardize how to run your business, would you buy this? And a bunch said they were super interested in it. And then one actually said, hey, you need to go meet this guy. His name's Harry. He's thinking about a really similar idea. So Harry and I met up. Turns out he was thinking about basically automating back office work, just like I was. We started chatting. We essentially did co-founder dating. Literally, he had actually a really detailed list built out, which is very impressive, of essentially your how to fall, the sort of joking things, like how to fall in love with someone in 50 questions or something. He basically built that out as a founder. And here's my list. I want you to create your own list, and then let's date, basically. We did that, realized we could work together, joined forces. And then in kind of early 2020, we had our first team meeting. It was myself, Harry, and then two other folks. And then COVID happened. And so now we're suddenly remote. And we kept building. So the short version of all this is we built some great tech. We ended up getting a bunch of good customers. We ended up raising about $10 million from top tier venture capitalists to go make this a reality, to really automate this idea. In kind of early 2022, we went to go raise our next round of funding. We had some really good metrics, but 2022 was not a great year to raise. And then 2, a lot of the VCs were like, hey, we love you guys. We love the idea, but your metrics look like they're more sort of services, quote unquote services, which was true. A lot of startups, frankly, you have this tech, but actually underneath it all, there's some people doing the real work, is the old joke that happens with a lot of technology companies. And so what we decided to do is we split the company in 2. So my former company, Abstract Ops, went in a different direction. They've now pivoted, have a new CEO. And then Chore became a separate entity in late 2022. And that's what we've been doing ever since. And I'm the sole founder of Chore, but we spun off and sort of had some we started off with a little bit of revenue in team members from my previous company as well.
Okay, so you got your team, you made the pivot where you split it into, we'll say, better working companies. Mm-hmm. When did you know that Chore, what happened, what metric happened, or what moment happened when you realized that Chore was going to be successful?
Yeah, pretty much almost right away, right? So the big risk we had, so the decision we came to at Abstract Ops with the 2 co-founders, we said, hey, we're going to go get rid of, we need to sort of but we can't have this services business anymore. It's not making money. The services business is losing money. It's essentially getting subsidized by venture capital. So we need to remove the venture capital business, or sorry, the VC funded services business, and move into this new industry. So do we get rid of all this revenue, just like fire all the customers, fire that team, or keep it and do something different? And like, what do you do? So we obviously decided like, hey, like I was like, I'm going to go see if I can go build this into something real. But it's scary because we're taking essentially a money losing services business and trying to see if we can make it into something real. So October 2022, take this new business, losing money. I immediately tell all of our customers, hey, we're going to jack up your prices by like 40% to break even. They all stayed with us. And I was like, phew. All right, because like, to be clear, I had to make a pretty massive loan to the company to make payroll. Right. So we got no money from my former company. We got some revenue and customers and team, but nothing else. Right. So I need to make a loan to the company, and our customers all stayed with us. They were like, we love what you're doing. We'll stick around. Yeah, you were undercharging, but we were cool with it, obviously, but we'll stick with you. And so that was probably the moment like, we can build something real here.
And that's such a good, it's a story I hear consistently, where it's like those crazy things you have to do to make payroll, the founder's not making money for 5 straight years. And like the point where they're like, okay, we've been doing this for 7 years. Oh my gosh, I can afford to buy a house now. Like there were just like these big like aha moments when that the economic model shifts and changes. But there is a consistency across a lot of founders that they have to do some sacrifice in those early stages to get it off the ground. So speaking of that, what's the future of Chore look like? And then we're gonna talk about some other areas of your work.
Yeah, I mean, so the future of Chore is pretty simple. The world is moving into a place where we will have fewer and fewer full-time employees on your team. However, the employees that you do have and the CEO and founders need to spend even more of their time being focused on achieving great outcomes. You need to be more focused. Everything's moving faster, which means fewer distractions, right? People don't really understand the idea of the cost of context switching, but it's very high. And so if you can reduce your context switching and move faster, those are the companies that will survive this sort of coming wave of AI change that's going to be forced upon us. And so the future of Chore is, one, we need to keep surfing this wave. So we're building more and more AI products to automate our work, to make the outcomes better, right? You literally improve outcomes for our customers. Over time, that's going to mean reduced prices. We will charge our customers less to achieve the same outcomes. As a same march of technology that we've always seen in life, as things keep improving, the cost actually goes down, right? A computer that I have today on my desk is cheaper than my computer was 10 years ago. Even with inflation, like in raw dollar terms, I think it's cheaper. So that will keep happening, and we'll be doing the same thing. But the thesis for us has always been the same. How do we get to a point where every company in the world realizes that they should never have internal operations? Maybe very specific roles. So if you get to 50 people, maybe you hire a head of HR. 100, you might hire a CFO. But you never need those secondary people. Like I hate the thesis when companies say, oh, I have a head of HR and they have someone else who manages payroll. So your HR team is at least 2 people and you have one person dedicated to payroll. Like, for all your listeners, that is a joke. Please stop wasting your money on that. No offense to that person who runs payroll. It is not a full-time job. Even at a company of 100 people, running payroll is an automated process. There are things that's not fully automated. It still takes some manual work to make it properly run. But you should not have that person doing that. Like that is your waste. If you want to employ someone and waste money on that role, more power to you, but just know you are wasting money to keep them employed. And so the future of Chore is making every smart company leaner, more efficient, and more effective at what they do. So those founders can refocus their time on building a successful company for the future.
So thinking about that, like your perspective on when to hire, when to fire, like all of that, let's talk about you as an angel investor. What do you look for when you're investing? Like what, you talked about like some companies should do this. Like, what are you looking for when you're thinking about investing in a company?
focused founders. I mean, literally founders who are obsessed with what they want to go build and who are laser focused. So I'll give you an example. I came across a company a few weeks ago, and they had someone internal who was like almost like a chief of staff doing some of this work. And they were like, hey, we just don't, and they were pretty big. They're growing really fast, getting big, all these other things. Like, hey, we think we want to keep doing this stuff internally for ourselves. And I was like, yeah, but like that means a lot of time for the founders who are wasting their time in all these different activities. They even said the founders are spending time doing this work. Their chief of staff was doing some of it, but the chief of staff was figuring it out. She had never done back office work before, right? She was very smart, but she was figuring it out as she goes. That means this is not their core competency. It is not their differentiator. They are never going to build the world's best systems for how to run HR or how to run accounts payable or accounts receivable or other finance elements. They're never going to do that because why would they? It is not their business. And they were moving fast, but they also didn't realize that like just the same way they outsource their servers to Amazon Web Services, right? Why not outsource your operations? And so that company, I feel very confident they will fail. I would never go work there personally, but like they're moving fast. They're making a lot of money right now, but their systems will break down. And then the founder is going to get bogged down with like, I need to hire a head of HR and all these other people who I've never managed before. I've never hired people in this role. I don't know how this role works. So what I look for in founders, to answer your question, are founders who say, yeah, I have no interest in doing this work. I want to get back to doing the thing that I care about. And maybe one last illustrative example, irrespective of his politics, I think everyone can agree Elon Musk is kind of a world-changing entrepreneur. Right. He's a sort of entrepreneur. As an entrepreneur, maybe not as a human, but as an entrepreneur, we want to emulate, I think. And imagine if, Elon Musk is trying to go to Mars, right? And then the head of HR comes in and says, hey, like, do you think we should use payroll system A or payroll system B? Elon Musk is going to tell that, like, he would literally say, you're fired. Like, get out of my office. Why are you distracting me? I'm trying to get to Mars and you're asking me whether I care about what payroll system we use. It is irrelevant to our goal of getting to Mars. Make sure our team gets paid. Like that needs to be done, but I don't care. Just make a smart decision and move on. And yet I come across founders all day long who want to be in the weeds because they feel like that's what a good CEO does. And I want to tell them, basically like shake them really hard and be like, that is what a bad CEO does. You're guaranteeing yourself failure.
That's so fascinating. And I think to your point, you have to think about it like what that CEO should be doing or should not be doing, and at what stage the business is at. I was listening to a podcast yesterday talking to someone who had created a coffee shop, and his advice to other entrepreneurs who want to create coffee shops. He's like, if you're not willing to actually go work in the coffee shop, you're going to miss out. So I think, from what you're saying is, yes, at some point they need to stop making those decisions. My argument would be when they're starting, they need to pay attention to some of the ground level stuff, because if not, later when they're doing strategic decision making, they're going to miss the boat. So I think it's like a balance of that, but I think there's a continuum from like day one to when they can hand things over.
So Heather, I'll push back just a little bit on that, just to have some fun, right? So I think that person is right, but you have to be very specific about what you mean by being sort of working in the business and being in there. So yes, I think it's really important to be on the ground, talking to your customers, understanding what they're buying, understanding what product they care about, what ambiance they like for a coffee shop. All of those things are absolutely critical. And yes, you need to be on the ground. And that goes for coffee shops all the way up to the biggest tech companies in the world. If you aren't engaging with your customers, you will fail. So in that sense, you're totally correct. However, I don't think there is anything that says the founder needs to be the one that understands how the payroll system works. Or fine, just choose a checkout system, right, to get people to pay. There's a bunch of them out there. They're good products. Go Google for 5 seconds. Great. I'm going to choose option A, get it installed. Don't learn the nuances of it. If you don't understand the nuances, go hire a contractor to go set up the nuanced pieces for you. So I disagree in that sense. Like, you should not be spending time on the little details that are standardized across your industry. So in other words, what makes a coffee shop great? The best beans, the best ambiance, maybe the best music, the best look and feel, the smell of the store. I don't know. There's a million things that probably make a coffee shop great. I guarantee no one goes into a coffee shop and says, I come here because their checkout system is the best. No one cares. So if a founder is spending time on that, they will fail. They are optimizing the wrong thing.
But to your point, when we were talking about who you look to invest in, and it's not which companies you look to invest, which is the question I asked, but you immediately went to, and I think this is consistent as well with venture and angel funding, is you're investing in the person. I mean, there's a reason why those pitch shows work and why it is having that person. But the reason you invest in them is because they're passionate about the purpose of the company. So if it's creating a great coffee experience, they're in that. But to your point, who cares what payment system they use? As long as they have one that's, has good ratings and will work with their accounting system, awesome, great. So I think it's that figuring out, like you said, what work on your business instead of in your business. Like where's that line and how do you delegate? So what do you think is the best way to go about delegating as a business is growing?
Everything you do, you should see if you can automate it or outsource it or hand it off. That's essentially the key things, right? I'm going to butcher it, but my executive coach, Ari Meisel, talks about AOA, I think, automate, outsource, and I forget what the last A is, but the key thing in really that world is saying, I'm going to hand off as much as possible. And you have to give yourself a year to try to just hand it all off. So how can you get yourself out of the weeds every day and say, look, you are someone I'm going to trust on this team to own this piece of work. I'm going to give it to you and just get it done. Don't come back to me. So to my team all the time, they'll send me notes like, hey, do you approve this? And I say, I don't care. Does it need my opinion? Do you think you're making the right decision? That's what I said. Do you feel like you're making the right decision for the company? If you do, you know it better than I do. Go ahead. I don't need to make a decision. The only times I feel like I need to get involved are when it is a one-way door. So there's sort of a famous Jeff Bezos thing from Amazon, where sort of one-way doors and two-way doors, right? One-way door, you walk through it, you can't go back. So that's a big decision, right? So selling your company, that is a one-way door that a founder should be deeply involved in making the decision about whether to sell, right? You can't go back from that decision. On the other hand, a two-way door is saying like, hey, I'm going to even hire an employee. I mean, that's a two-way door, right? If it doesn't work out, you can fire them and let them go. You obviously don't want to have that happen, and certainly don't have that happen often, but it's a two-way door. And most decisions are two-way doors. If it's a two-way door, I want the person who's closest to the decision, who's going to be most impacted by that decision, make the decision. And then I want to be focused on things that only I can do. So that's where I try to delegate all the time.
And I think that's the key is when you're in the hiring process, understanding what that person brings to the party so that you can have the confidence in delegating to them. Having that strong management team, that's another here I see consistently. You take the time to hire the right people, you can move to this model much, much faster. So let's talk about exiting. Tell me about your experience with selling companies.
Yeah, so I went through one exit myself. A company, a few companies ago, we exited, and it was an interesting experience, right? So you end up getting acquired, you end up going through that. You have the discussion. Actually, I guess when you think about it, the very first one, when I first moved to Silicon Valley, was also an acquisition. I was not the founder, and at that company, we got acquired by Symantec, big company. I had to stay for at least 12 months, all those other key things, and sort of the golden handcuffs to some extent, and to build those pieces out. And I think it can go really well, but obviously it can also be sort of a failure where it's coming on board. Maybe it's just an acqui-hire, things like that. And also I've walked away from an acquisition where we should have said yes to the deal, and we didn't. And that was a big mistake. So there are always lots of different options and things that can happen on that front.
Okay, so you're not the first person I've talked to who's walked away from a deal. So tell me, like in one sense, why did you walk away? What was the thing, or what was happening that you were like, we have to walk away? And then tell me, after that, why you were like, we shouldn't have. Like, what were the key flags that should have said, you know what, this was a good deal, we should have done it? What did you see there?
Yeah, so the reason we didn't say yes to the deal, so the company was my first company. we were kind of just getting, we actually stumbled upon, I mean, not stumbled, we thought about it. It was kind of a pivot in a business. We were starting to make money. We were essentially doing background checks for companies. We had pivoted from kind of using data off of Facebook and Twitter and other sources where you could get that data back in the day to we were using that almost as like a way to verify people, to trust them. We pivoted into doing background checks. It was working. Like people were starting, it's kind of the rise of background checks, but all the background check companies then sucked. They were terrible. We were kind of putting a fancy interface on top of them. And we had kind of a cool business going, but we kind of just got tired. We were like, do we want to keep building this? Do we want to raise our next round? We should have, but we didn't. But during that, so we're like, let's explore acquisition. We ended up talking to, I'm blanking on the name of the company right now, but they're a pretty big name. Big name, big company now. And we talked to them and they essentially offered us an acqui-hire, right? So it would have been wiped out all of our investors. My team and I would have gotten essentially good jobs in good equity, but not like nothing crazy. It wasn't like some massive amount of money, but like kind of better than if we were just getting hired for those roles off the street sort of thing. So better. And we should have said yes. And here's why. And we said no. The reason we said no is because we sat down and said, hey, would we want to work for this company just if we were applying normally? And we're all like, yeah, like wasn't that cool of a company. We didn't know where it was going. It wasn't like a cool technology. And so we're like, no, not really, was kind of our conclusion. And our mistake what I tell all founders is you want to get that exit on your resume, essentially. So no one says you have to stay there for a long time. No one says it has to be $1 billion exit, but you at least get the exit. And then it sets you up for the next big thing. And you might end up loving it for all you know, too. So for us, we should have said yes, got taken the jobs, maybe ended up loving it, or said, hey, like this isn't for us. Okay, too. And that's where we kind of made a mistake. And that's why we said no, because we just didn't feel like it was things. So we shut down the company, gave money back to investors, and then moved on and did new things.
Yeah, but there's a lot of learnings there. I think my background's as a scientist. So failure is never a failure because it just means that one option is gone.
Yep.
And that's okay because that simplifies things. So there's a lot to learn from succeeding, but a lot to learn from failure as well. So we're talking about, you're talking about workforce development, like basically hiring people, firing what you're looking, and technology. What do you see changing when it comes, especially as you're looking as an investor, what is going to change about the workforce and how people work going forward?
I mean, look, I think AI is changing. I think AI has changed everything about our lives right now. And it is going to dramatically shape how we work, what we get done, how fast we get it done, and the pace of things. So any employee today who is still doing the same job they were doing a year ago or 2 years ago and doing it and by the same job, I don't mean you're in the same role. I mean, doing it the same way. So if you're doing the job that you did, same job 2 years ago and doing it the exact same way you were 2 years ago, you are going to get left behind. I don't know how to say that in a nicer way, but you will fail. You will not have a job in the economy of the future if you don't quickly upskill yourself and learn how to use AI every day. Imagine having essentially like dozens of interns with you all the time who are actually like way better than interns, they're way smarter than most interns, helping you all the time, building things, getting things done, understanding your data. All of that gives you more time to focus on other parts of your job. And so every company needs to be considering that. Every team member needs to be considering that. And if they don't, once again, you're setting yourself up for a really dangerous future, essentially where you will be unemployable.
Okay, so let's talk about those interns. Now that we don't need interns anymore, what do all of the kids in high school and college do? What do we do with these amazing students who are coming out with degrees right now that I don't even know how to use them?
And Heather, I know you have some kids who are in that age range. This is a bigger macro political question that I will opine on, even though I will say I'm not necessarily qualified to do so. The short answer is I think they need to be building every single day. Like if they are not spending 2 hours, if they're sitting at home coming out of school and they're not spending 2 hours or 3 hours a day just building with AI, which 2 or 3 hours a day just, is not very much in the grand scheme of like a full day of your like being awake. Like 2 or 3 hours is really not that much time. They need to be spending 2 or 3 hours like playing with AI, building new things. Like, oh, I dreamt of this, or I saw this problem today and want to go build this product. If they aren't doing that, then they won't have a job, right? So I'll give you an example. I'm about to sign a contract working with a kid who's 14 years old. He is amazing at AI stuff, incredibly well-spoken, but amazing at AI stuff, knows how to build it, knows how to move quickly. And he's 14 years old. And so like, I'm going to hire him, but I don't care what age the person is. I would hire somebody who's they're 80 years old and also can move quickly and get this stuff done. It doesn't matter to me, but that goes to show like, but if you're in the middle and you're just like, well, like, I went into high school and AI didn't exist and I came out of college and now AI is everywhere. And like, I like ask ChatGPT 1 or 2 questions here and there every week. Like you don't deserve a job. Like no one deserves a job. So like, why do you think you do just because you have a college degree now? Sorry.
Absolutely. I think that agility and ability to learn and to be willing to change the way you think about the world is absolutely key. That growth mindset is so important right now. So let's talk about advice then. I am presuming you have some amazing mentors giving your success. What is some of the best advice you've gotten from them?
I mean, probably the best advice from them in general has been around just work hard every day. So I'm a really big believer. Look, it's really rare. We all want to talk about those people who like Mark Zuckerberg or something, or who have like these amazing one-off exits that like just they suddenly they have one idea and it gets huge and they're multi-billionaires. The simple fact is the large majority of people who are successful in the world have worked really hard day in and day out. They do an excellent job in their job every single day. They get recognized for that every single day. And those are the people who are the most successful. On top of that, the second piece of advice is actually around compounding. And compounding also applies to working hard. If you start off in your first job and you work hard and you do good work, then one thing leads to the next. And all of that compounds. And so you get better and better at your job. You get more and more recognized in the work that you do. And all of that builds up. And so people don't remember or realize like compounding is sort of the 8th wonder of the world, not just in your finances, but also in life. And so you compound with your friends, you compound with your family, you compound with your work. And so maybe an example there with me specifically, in my first job when I came out to Silicon Valley, I was doing good work. So I kind of got recognized in a lot of different ways. Actually, my very first job, I won all these awards in my first job, right? I was a super straight out of grad school, started a whole new program to do basically environmental related things for the company. They were a tech company, but getting sort of awards for that. So boom, out of the blue, got the COO to give me a big budget to go build this whole thing. And people are like, who is this kid, right? Like I was a kid. They're like, who is this kid? I then get an amazing job in Silicon Valley. That company also does do well. There was a moment where we were going through an acquisition of that company. I noticed that all of the HR data for everyone in the team was exposed publicly. I immediately contacted the CEO and said, hey, this is available. FYI. They locked it down. They gave me an award, but guess what? They also checked out. They said, hey, they had full audits of everyone who looked at the data. And they asked me like, hey, what did you look at? I said, look, I looked at the first page. I noticed that I should not be seeing this. And I turned it off immediately and contacted the CEO. They're like, thank you. We had a lot of people who looked through it. We saw who looked through it and what they looked at. Thank you for doing that. And of course, and so that CEO has been a friend of mine ever since then and has been helpful in different ways. And look, people still wonder. I mean, I'm in my mid 40s and I have a family and I still work 6 days a week. And people wonder, why do you do that? Right? You have all this quote unquote success. And I said, it's because this is how you compound and make worthwhile things happen that you can be proud of. And so I know it's a long-winded way of saying essentially hard work and compounding are the 2 most important pieces of advice I've ever received.
Excellent. Good advice. Very good advice. I have one last question, but before I ask it, I want to point people to your website at hirechore.com, or of course to find you on LinkedIn. And then we didn't even talk about your podcast. So do you want to share with our audience
Sure.
what your podcast is and what you guys are trying to accomplish with it?
Absolutely. It's called Entrepreneurial Excellence. And the focus is pretty simple. We talk to lots and lots of entrepreneurs about what made them successful, right? To your point of being a lifelong learner, I want to keep learning how I can be a better entrepreneur. I think I'm a good entrepreneur. I don't think I'm a great entrepreneur. And so how do I get to that great level is I keep learning every single day and trying to learn from the people who've done it well before. And that's what the podcast is focused on.
Excellent. Excellent. So last question. And I honestly, I think we could probably talk for another 3 hours. I have so many more questions I want to ask you, but what is a hard lesson that you learned in growing the companies and building the companies that you've built, that you learned while starting out that you would love to share with future CEOs to help them avoid what the issues you've had?
I mean, I'm going to give you an answer that I don't know. I hope it's not offensive to my team, but people are really messy. People are wonderful in so many different ways. And you couldn't build companies without people and without people buying your products, right? But people are also really messy. And so my best advice is try to build a company as lean as you possibly can. So many founders do not realize the cost of hiring new people. So for there's some stat out there that I posted recently, but it's about I think let's say for somebody who has $100,000 salary that you hire, the actual cost for that person is something like 2.5x that amount total. So you take into account, so that includes things like, okay, all the time to recruit the person, all the time to train the person, all the time to manage the person day to day or month to month, whatever your management style is. When they go on vacation, what if they leave after 6 months? Because a lot of people do leave after a short period of time. So they leave after a certain period of time. All these things go into it. And you start saying, wait a second, every employee is really expensive. On top of it, the rise of global, kind of due to COVID, right? But because we can work globally now, you can hire amazing contractors anywhere in the world. And the beautiful thing, and look, Chore, we are a contractor to our customers. The beautiful thing of contractors is they say, I'm going to do X. If they fail to accomplish X, you can not only sue them, you probably can get your money back in many cases from them. And then move on and find a better contractor. So it's not always going to work with every contractor and every vendor you use, right? You're not always, if you buy Coca-Cola and you like Pepsi, you might not like the Coke, right? That's fine. You go get a different one. You move on. The beautiful thing of contractors is you can do that. Whereas if you want to hire an employee, man, it might take you 6 months to realize they're not a fit. And now you put all this time and energy into them. You have to now go restart the entire process. And the fact is it's probably going to be a 50% hit rate for most jobs, even jobs you know well. In other words, if I really know how to hire lots of people in the HR space, I still might fail 50% of the time. If I'm a CEO who's never hired anyone in HR, I might fail 75% of the time. So kind of my biggest piece of advice is just hire fewer full-time people, hire more contractors with a defined, clear plan. I'm hiring you to achieve X. If you don't achieve X, we will move on. And get competitive quotes for that. I mean, one sort of, I keep going, but I give you an example we just did right now, but I just hire fewer people, see if you can outsource it, delegate it, or frankly, at this point, build AI to do it too.
Excellent advice. And part of that is being able to have that overarching strategic mindset of when and where to make those decisions.
Yeah.
This has been great. I've been talking with Adam Spector, founder of Chore. Adam, thank you so much for sharing your experience, your stories. I will definitely be following to see what you're doing next because I have a feeling it's going to be pretty exciting.
Well, Heather, that is nice of you to say. Every day is hard and learning new things every day too. But I'll do my best to keep it interesting and fun.
Thank you for listening to the Growth Plus Exit podcast, sponsored by Newport, a unique national business advisory firm. If you enjoy this show, be sure to share, like, and subscribe for future episodes.